Okay, so welcome to our first video here. I suggest it's going to be the first of many, so unfortunately in terms of woodwork there's not a whole lot we can do only other than cover the theory aspects of the class. So hopefully we won't be out of school too long, we'll be able to get back in at the practical. But for now we'll start working through some of the workbook and the actual textbook and covering some more of the theory aspects of the class. So the way in which the videos will work is I'll upload videos to YouTube and you can follow along. The slides will be up on the video as well and you can just pause them as you like and you can take down the notes from each slide. It'll work very similar to the way we do in class, except I'll just be doing the voiceover on it and you can just take the notes as you go along. So this week we're going to have a look at diseases and defects. Now before Christmas we actually started the defects aspect of this. So I'll actually go back over the whole lot again. In this video here, I'll talk for about 10-12 minutes or so. I'll talk through the defects part of the actual chapter. And then the next video we'll do the diseases. So in terms of defects, the word defect I suppose means something wrong. And in terms of this is something wrong with the timber, right? So you have basically two categories of defects. You have either natural or artificial. So the artificial really occurs during the seasoning process. So we know seasoning is when you actually dry out the timber. So we'll look first at natural defects occurring in nature, and then we'll have a quick look at the artificial defects. So then we have the first thing then we have are knots. So knots occur in the timber, okay, where there has been a branch grown. So if you see a trunk of a tree and there's a branch going out of it, there will be a knot at some point in that where the branch goes into the tree. So there's two types of knots. There's live knots and then there is dead knots. Live knots occur when they cut down the tree and that said branch that's making the knot is still alive. So straightforward, a live knot is when the tree's cut down and the branch is still alive. If there would have been a branch died on a tree, or maybe it was rotten off or things like that, which you do see times in trees, that would form a dead knot. So you notice the dead knots, you can even see here in the picture, is very dark and discolored and it starts to rot away. If you have very thin timber and it's outside and say wooden fencing, you'll find that you can actually nearly poke the knots out. That's a dead knot. Some of you might have seen that before. In terms of construction and using things like that, you try straight away from any knots, but if you had to take the ones, you'd take the live knot as they are stronger. The dead knot will eventually contract and shrink basically, and it will fall out of piece and it leaves an unsightly hole there. Okay, so that's knots. So take down knots, live knot and dead knot. Next artificial defect then is a resin pocket. Okay, so simply what a resin pocket is, it's some part of the tree where the tree transports its sap. So you know, if you climb a tree, the sticky part or the resin of the tree is sap. That's how the tree gets its food. Okay, it's kind of a glucose mixture. And what happens is the way the tree transports this sap up through it, it can get stuck and it causes kind of a resin pocket or a resin canal. So it's basically a part of the timber that has kind of full of sap. In terms of if you were making, say, a tabletop or something, it would look very unsightly on top of the table and it'd be sticky as well. So you kind of want to try to avoid resin pockets in places as it's just bad finish. Okay, so that's your next point to take down, a resin pocket. Now, shakes. Okay, there's two types of shakes, essentially two groupings. So there's radial shakes and there's tangential. I'd be more worried so about you actually just learning the 5 types of shake rather than the groupings they come under. So what a shake essentially is a fancy word for saying a crack in the timber. Now, if we look here on the left hand side, you can see there's a hard shake, a star shake and a frost shake. So these are radial shakes, okay? You know they're radial because it relates to the word radius, which is half the diameter of the circle, okay? So you have the hard shake, which goes to the center or the heart of the tree. You then have the star shake, named so because it looks like a star, and then you have a frost shake. So when you're in geography, maybe you've learned about it, maybe you haven't. You know that freeze-thaw action occurs. It's basically when water freezes, it expands. Then when it thaws out, it contracts. So over time, what this does, it basically causes splitting. So if water can get into a tree somewhere, it can contract, expand, blah, blah, blah. It cracks, okay, over time. Now, there's also cup shake. You can see it's in the shape of a C, kind of. And that's from where the winter wood separates from the summer wood. And then you have a ring shake. Okay. So mainly the reason these shakes are caused, more than likely, is weather. So it's either the wind moving the trees, causing the tree to crack, or freezing temperatures, or what can happen a lot is trees can get struck by lightning. Okay, so that's fairly common as well. And then finally, the last reason for a shake would be when you actually go to fell the tree. So cutting down the tree, you know, if you ever see a tree being cut down, it's a lot of stress on the tree when it hits the ground, so it can break that way as well. Okay, so what you need to do, you need to take down shakes, a crack in the tree or in the timber. Okay, you need to draw 5 circles and draw on the shake for each one and label it. Okay, so exactly as it has on the slide here. So I'll let you do that there. You can pause the video and I'll continue on. Now, veiny edge, okay? Veiny edge is basically, as you can see in the picture, where the bark or the natural edge of the board is left exposed. So when they cut up the board, okay, they leave the bark or the edge on it. Why? Because it gives a nice rustic look to the piece of timber. It's used a lot in tabletops, okay? And see, it says often used in projects, gives a rustic natural edge. So tabletops, you'd see a lot of this. Things like maybe chopping boards or serving boards, like there's one here for likes of cheese or stuff you might have at Christmas. So it's basically a way of giving the timber its kind of natural edge. It's also known as live edge either. Alright, so this is a defect, yes, but it actually makes the timber more expensive. So it's highly sought after as it's used a lot in design and things like that. So people would actually like using this in their timber or in their project. So it actually costs more money, even though it's a defect. Alright, so it's kind of a good defect to have if you can get it. Now, artificial defects, most of these are caused in the seasoning, and more than likely it's either one or two things. Either the board is stored incorrectly in the stack, okay, so there's not enough air circulating through, or there's no stickers in between, okay, and then there's also incorrect temperature. Alright, so what we have, first one is cupping. So as you can see, the board bends across the edge. Okay, so across the short edge, you can see cupping, it bends up, and then bowing, it bends along the length of the timber. So the way I remember this always is a cup. You can kind of see the edge profile in the end looks like a C for cup. And then bowing, if you think about a bow and arrow, the timber is bent along the long ways of the board. Alright, so if you were to think about making a bow out of a piece of timber, it would have to be bent along the long edge of it. So that's the difference between cupping and bowing. More than likely, timber dries out too quick in the kiln, or it's stored incorrectly. Okay, then next we have another few. You can just take down these notes. I'd advise there for cupping and bowing as well, sketch them in. Alright, so draw a little quick sketch, put down bowing and cupping underneath, and the same for twisting, warping, and end splitting. So twisting and warping can often happen. You'll see this in builders merchants when you go out to the yard. You'll often find the timber that is very wide and very thin, so maybe like a 6x1 board, would twist and warp as it dries out at different rates in different places. It's also stored incorrectly. Alright, so twist and warping is fairly self-explanatory. You can see it in the picture. It just basically means the board twists along the whole length of it. And then you have end splitting. Alright, so end splitting, the board dries out too quick, the end cracks. Now you've seen in your book in the season, the way to prevent this is they put a wet rag on the end, or they also put stuff like wax on it. Then we have case hardening also. It basically means the board kind of buckles and things because it dries out at different rates. I wouldn't be too worried about case hardening. So the main thing you need to learn from this is your different types of shakes, weighing the edge, and bowing, cupping, twisting, and warping. Okay, and also your end spinning. What I would say to you is stop the video as you go along, okay, and then simply take your notes down into your copy. Alright, so that's it for this video. The next one we'll be looking at diseases, alright, associated with timber. Okay, so thanks very much.